Okay, so last lesson I showed you how we could prove the quadratic formula using completing the square, but this one we're actually going to use it to actually solve a quadratic equation. So first off, what we want to do, we have this formula here with b's and a's and c's everywhere, okay, and we just want to understand the b's and a's and c relate to the general form of a quadratic equation, okay? Where a is the coefficient of the x squared, b is the coefficient of the x, and c is the constant term. Okay? And all we do with this equation is we take our coefficients from this equation and sub it into this formula and then do a little bit of tidying up. Okay? So just reminding you that this works for any quadratic equation regardless of whether you can factorise it or not. Okay? It will generate the solution. For the examples that we're doing today, most of them will either be fractions or involve surds, and just remember that we want to leave our answers, unless we're asked, in exact form. So if they have a surd, we leave it with a surd. Okay, so let's jump right into it. The first thing that I want you to identify is notice that everything is on the left-hand side of the equal sign. We don't have anything over here. It's all equal to 0. That means that straight away we can jump in and identify the coefficients of each of our terms. Okay, so A, B, and C. Okay, so A is the coefficient of the x squared term, you'll notice over here in our general form, okay, and that is equal to 1. We tend not to write it, but it is equal to 1 there. Okay, B is equal to 4, that is the coefficient of the x term, okay, and C is equal to negative 7, that is our constant term. Please remember to include the negative, okay, that negative, you can think of it as being attached to that 7, okay, it's an easy mistake to forget it and not include it, and then it'll mess with your answer a little bit. Okay, so let's actually jump into actually calculating this. Okay, we know using our quadratic equation formula that we're going to end up with x is equal to negative b. Okay, negative b, which is negative 4, and I like to substitute everything in brackets just so I don't make a mistake with my negatives. Plus or minus the square root of b squared, so that is 4 all squared again, minus 4ac. 4 times 1, which is our A, okay, times C, which is negative 7. I've run out of room a little bit there, but you can see what we've done. Don't forget to take the square root of all of that. All we're doing is substituting, okay, all over 2A. So 2 times our A is 1. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to tidy everything up a little bit. So come down the line, there's no negatives that we have to worry about for the term out the front. So that's just negative 4, plus or minus. 4 squared is 16, minus, okay, just be careful, minus 4 times 1 is still 4, times 7 is 28, but we have 2 negatives, making it a positive. So that is 16 plus 28. Just be careful with your negatives there, that is easy to make a mistake. All over 2, okay? Now after we tidy all of this up a little bit, we still got some more to do. X equals minus 4. Plus or minus, I'm just going to bring this up, I just realised you can't see it. X equals minus 4, plus or minus the square root of 16 plus 28 is 44, all over 2, okay? So still working with what we have. What you should be checking along each step is whether you can simplify this surd or not. It just so happens that you can simplify this surd by rewriting it as the square root of 4 times the square root of 11, which is equal to 2 root 11, because the square root of 4 is 2, okay? So coming down another line, I'm just going to move this up again. X is equal to minus 4 plus or minus 2 root 11, okay, all over 2. We can factorise the numerator of this fraction, and I actually encourage you to do this to try and get your answer as simple as possible, okay. If we factorise the top, you'll notice it has a common factor of 2 on both terms, okay. So now x is equal to 2 outside of minus 2 plus or minus root 11, okay, all over 2. Okay, we have a 2 on the top and a 2 on the bottom. They will cancel, giving us our answer now as x is equal to minus 2 minus root 11 and minus 2 plus root 11. And that is the answer to this quadratic equation. When we're using the formula, all we're really doing is substituting and tidying up. Okay, it's probably one of the easier ways to do it in comparison to completing the square. Okay, so let's jump in and have a little bit more practice with some other examples. Okay, for our second example here, what you're going to notice is that our equation is not all equal to 0. So we have to do a little bit of work firsthand to have something on the left hand side equal to 0. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move firstly the x over to the left hand side by minus it from the right. So we now have x squared minus x is equal to 1. And then secondly, what I'm going to do, okay, is I'm going to move the 1 by minusing 1 from both sides to now have x squared minus x minus 1 is now all equal to 0. Now we have it in this form. What we can do is we can start to use the quadratic equation formula by identifying our coefficients, a, b, and c. The coefficient a was of the x squared term. You'll notice that we just have a 1 there. For b, it's the coefficient of the x, and while we don't write it, there's actually a negative 1 in there. Okay, and again, the constant term, c, is equal to negative 1. Okay, so now, using our formula, we're just going to do some substitution in, okay, and start to tidy it all up. So we have x is equal to negative b, which is negative 1. I encourage you to be very, very careful here with your negatives, okay? It is very easy to make a mistake. Plus or minus the square root, okay, we'll start that off there, of b squared. Well, that's negative 1 all squared minus 4 times a, okay, times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 1. All over the square root, okay, all over, and now we have 2 times a. Alright, so all we're going to do, a is equal to 1, okay, and we've substituted everything in. I apologise, I really should write this over there, so I apologise for this being a little bit cramped. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do some tidying up here, again, just like last time. You'll notice we have a negative times a negative. That actually becomes positive 1. Be careful with your negatives. Okay, I'll move this up so we can see where we're going. Plus or minus the square root of negative 1 squared is 1. 4 times 1 is still going to be 4, and then 2 negatives will make a positive. So 1 plus 4. All over 2 times 1 is still 2. Okay, so again, we're going to come down another line. We have 1 plus or minus, tidy up underneath the square root, we have 1 plus 4 is 5. All over 2. Okay, so that now means our solution, if we're leaving it in exact form, will be x is equal to 1 minus root 5 over 2 and 1 plus root 5 over 2. And that is the solution to our second example there. Okay, so again, re-highlighting, just be careful with your negatives, being careful with simplifying under the square root, okay, and being careful with your coefficients that you're putting in. Alright, so we'll do one more. Okay, so for our last example, you'll notice straight away, okay, we don't have to move anything in our equation. It's already been done for us because it's all equal to 0. So we're fine straight away to start using the quadratic formula. Okay, so just like last time, we're going to identify the coefficients of the terms. Remember, a is the coefficient of x squared, so in this case it is 2. Okay, b is the coefficient of the x term, so that is 9. And c is the constant term, okay, and that is also 9. So now substituting these into our formula, okay, up here, we have x is equal to minus b, which is 9, plus or minus the square root, and we'll start that off, of 9 squared, okay, minus 4 times a is 2, times c, okay, which is 9, finish the square root off, all over 2 times a, which is 2 again. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, again, we're just going to tidy this up. We have x is equal to minus 9. We don't have to worry about any negatives playing around there. Plus or minus the square root of 9 squared is 81, minus 4 times 2 is 8, times 9 is 72. Okay, closing up that square root there. All over 2 times 2, which is now 4. Okay, so let's tidy up underneath this square root a little bit. So x is equal to minus 9 plus or minus the square root of 81 minus 72 is 9, all over 4. Okay, you might notice here the square root of 9 is actually a rational number. Okay, the square root of 9 is equal to 3. So now x is equal to minus 9 plus or minus 3, all over 4. So after you figure this out, you'll end up with two solutions. Okay, we'll just come up a little bit. We'll end up with two solutions. X is equal to minus 9 minus 3 over 4. and minus 9 plus 3 over 4, okay? So x is then going to be equal to, let's come up, okay, so you can see what we're doing. Minus 9 minus 3 is 12. 12 over 4, negative 12 over 4 will be negative 3. Just be careful with our negatives. Minus 9 plus 3 will be 6, and negative 6. And negative 6 over 4 is equal to minus 3 over 2 after we simplify our fractions. Okay, so again, when using the quadratic formula, all we're doing is just simplifying, alright, after we've done some substitution. Okay, but please make sure that you ensure it's in general form, that is, the entire quadratic is on one side of the zero, okay, of the equation equaling 0. So just be careful with that, okay? I hope this helps in your understanding.